Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome back to our ongoing series on the lectures of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pastaja Deshatarine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're continuing with our mini-series on Stimulation for Ecstatic Love, and this will be part 78. With our last lecture on Kavikarnapura, we concluded our discussions on Vaishnava poets. And today we'll begin a new subject, which will be paraphernalia used in worship of the deity of the Lord. Another short little series. Of course, we have discussed paraphernalia in previous lectures, but in this series we'll focus especially on deity paraphernalia. And as our first installment, we'll discuss bells. Bells. Actually, chapter 26 of Nectar of Devotion, entitled, again, Stimulation for Ecstatic Love, mentions bells as a stimulation for such love. There it is written. A certain gopi once stated to her friend, "My dear friend, when I heard the sound of the leg bells of Sri Krishna, I immediately started to go out of the house to see him. But most regrettably, my superiors were present just before me at that time, and I could not go out." I also came across a very beautiful prayer by a Vaishnava poet named Rasika Kishore, where he, could you say, poetically refers to bells, awakening love for Guru and Gauranga. It's very sweet and it's very deep. He writes, "I was sleeping in the darkness of ignorance, my bed made out of illusion, and my pillow my material attachments. I was seeing the false dreams of lusty and greedy desires, when suddenly the sweet sound of a bell came to my ears, and my consciousness was diverted to the hands of my beloved Guru, who woke me up by the sweet-sounding ankle bells of Lord Gaura. In doing so, he revealed to me the realm of divine love for Gaura Prabhu. My Lord's walking is like the rumbling sounds of bells, his laughing like the heartbeats of bells, his moving like the jokes of bells, his words like the praises of bells, his every action sounds like the countless jingling of bells, which wake sleeping souls up to dance in the ecstasy of Sri Krishna's love. Poet Rasika says, 'Serve the Lord, Sachi Sutta, who rings the bells of our hearts.'" Hare Krishna. Of course, most of us from Christian backgrounds are familiar with bells and spiritual practices, most notably church bells. There's an old poem I remember from my youth, "When the old church bell that we love so well swings aloft in the belfry tall, with a joyous peal, oh how glad we feel as we hasten to its call." It's interesting that the ringing of bells actually played an important part of the beginning of the Hare Krishna movement. In chapter 19 of our beloved Srila Prabhupada Leela, entitled Planting the Seed, we hear Srila Prabhupada, picked up 2 brass bells in his left hand and began ringing them. Then lighting 2 sticks of incense from the candle near the picture of Lord Chaitanya and his associates, he began waving the incense slowly in small circles before Lord Chaitanya while still ringing the bells. He looked deeply at the picture and continued cutting spirals of fragrant smoke, all the while ringing the bells. None of the boys knew what he was doing, although he did it every evening. But it was a ceremony. It meant something. The boys began to call the ceremony bells. The boys began to call the ceremony bells. After bells, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it would usually be time for the evening kirtan. Srila Prabhupada Leela. But bells have always been an important part of our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. I came across a poem by a pujari who served Govindaji hundreds of years ago. His name was Krishna Das Brahmachari. He wrote, "Hear the bell, brother, hear the bell, the music of the sacred sanctum, the reverberation of mantras, the echo of sacred hymns, the vibration of prayers, all ringing together in the bell, in the sacred sanctum of Govindaji." Krishna Das says, "I will leave all the music of Indraloka behind to ring the bell in the kunja of Madan Mohan." Now, ISKCON's deity worship handbook, entitled Archana Padati, describes the bell used in puja as follows. The sound of a bell embodies all music. If a devotee lacks instruments and kirtan, he should simply ring a bell, for that sound in itself is dear to the Lord. Thus one should worship the puja bell before worshipping the Lord as an item of his paraphernalia that is very dear to him. Many functions of worship require that one ring a bell with a handle. I was reading that in ancient times, Brahmanas in South India used to ring very large bells while doing puja. That is why they're often described or depicted, you could say, in old drawings and paintings as very large and powerful men, because they use big bells. Actually, according to the Pancha Rata tradition of worship, such brahmanas and priests use bells made of either bell metal, silver, copper, or brass. But bells made of gold, iron, and other alloys were not used. And the interesting thing is that it was written how much the bells used in puja for different deities should weigh. In other words, for this deity, you use a bell that's this heavy. For that deity, use a bell which is another weight, like that. And I researched, and I was astonished to learn that all these bells used, especially in South India here, were extremely heavy. For example, for worshipping Sudarshan Chakra and Lord Nrsingadev, the bell had to weigh 8 kilos of pure bell metal. 8 kilos. For Vamanadev, the pujari used a bell of 7 kilos of pure bell metal. For Varaha, 6 kilos of pure bell metal. For Lord Ram, the pujari rang a bell 5 kilos of pure bell metal. For Parasurama, for the deity of Parasurama, the pujari used 4 kilos, a bell made of 4 kilos of pure bell metal. And for Haladar, Lord Balaram, 3 kilos of pure bell metal. For Hayagriva, the bell was 2 kilos of pure bell metal. For Trivikram, less than 2 kilos of pure bell metal. And for Krishna, 1 kilo of pure bell metal. And for Shalagram Shila, the pujari would ring a bell less than 1 kilo of pure bell metal. Very detailed deity worship. So just imagine these pujaris, these brahmanas, ringing these huge bells by hand while doing puja. But it's a fact. Now the procedure of using bells in puja is written in many different shastras. One description is found in a shastra known as Padma Dipika. Padma Dipika. And therein I found a prana mantra is given that is chanted just before ringing the bell. Om Sarva Vada Mai Ghanta Dev Devasya Balabe Chyama Bina Naiva Sarvesham Bhavati Shobhane. Translated, it means, I offer my respects to you, O divine bell. You are the best amongst musical instruments. Your divine sounds are liked by all the demigods. O sacred sound, without your presence, no lord or ritual is pleased. Prana mantra. Then, while ringing the bell in the right hand, the pujari would chant Agama Artam Tu Devanam, Gamana Artam Tu Rakshanam, Ganta Ravam Karom Yado, Devatanam Ava Havan Locham. Quote, I am ringing a bell to invoke the demigods, to remove the existence of demons, and for the happiness of all living creatures. Following Vedic principles, I invoke the sacred sounds of the bell. I never knew we could get so much information about bells in Vedic culture. But seek and ye shall find. It's all there in the scripture. Then the pujari would offer a flower to the bell, saying, Om Sarvavada Mai Gantaye Namaha. I offer my respects to the best of all instruments. The bell, the best of all instruments. Of course, in ISKCON, we use a slightly different standard and different mantras, but it's interesting to hear the history of bells in ancient times. One very interesting thing, though, is that this Padma Dipika, this scripture, describes the places where demigods reside on the bell's structure. As follows. The lower part of the bell is the asana of Lord Brahma. The hanging metal part inside, which rings, is the asana of Saraswati. The handle of the bell is the place of Ganesh, and the top of the bell can be for any vahana, carrier of the deity that one is worshipping. Now regarding that, the top part of the bell, bells with the top of a bull are only meant to be used by followers of Lord Shiva. Bells with the conch on top of the bell are only meant to be used by Sri Vaishnavas and Madhvas. Bells with Garuda on top are meant to be used by followers of Lord Ram. Bells with the chakra on top are meant to be used only by devotees of Lord Jagannath, because you know in the Jagannath temple there's a huge chakra on top. And bells with no shape on top, or a top shaped like a peacock, a flower, or a gopi, a cowherd girl, are to be used only by Gaudiya Vaishnavas or other Vrindavan Sampradayas. I thought that was interesting. Other shapes we mentioned, like the conch, the chakra, or the garuda, the tops of the bells, are not to be used in Vrindavan because they are symbols of Lord Vishnu, who was worshipped in the mode of Aishvarya Bhav, or on veneration in Vaikuntha. That mood does not exist in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, as we know, the Brajabasis worship Krishna in the intimacy of love. Therefore, bells for worship in Braj don't have any symbols of Vishnu. So interesting. Now, Shastra goes on to mention the different sounds of bells used in worship of the Lord. Actually, it mentions 7 different types of sounds, like as follows. Madhyama means a sound not too loud and not too soft. Ujvalika, this means a bell that makes a loud but sweet sound. Braja Pina Kini, a noisy sound and very loud. Madhur Vadini, very soft, sweet sound. Vichitra Bandhani, it means a mixed yet beautiful type of sound. And Gama Rambini, the sound of mooing cows. You can imagine you're ringing a bell. Sounds like mooing cows. And Hamsa Nadini, a sound like a group of Hamsa birds. Wow. An interesting tradition is that in Bengal, 2 different types of bells are used in worship. One is big and one is small. Small bells are used for offering bhoga, and big bells are used when offering artik, the gaurnitai. But in Vrindavan, it said, only one big bell is used for all the artiks. Now in Vrindavan, in the land of love and bliss, bells are not only articles used in worship, paraphernalia used in worship, but they're used as decorations and even jewelry on the transcendental forms of Radha and Krishna. Sri Radha often wears, I was reading, bell-like earrings, and Krishna wears a thread of bells tied around his waist called kinkini. kinkini in Sanskrit. He also wears a bell as a pendant in a necklace around his neck. And I was reading, he also wears bells in a turban called gomukut. And of course, we know he wears ankle bells. Now, the poet Surdas, who we have often quoted, most expertly alludes to bells when describing the beauty of Srimati Radharani. It's so beautiful. He writes, O Saki, the transcendental body of Sri Radha is the sacred temple of Shyamasundar. Her heart is the Simhasan of the Lord. Her eyes are the doorsteps of that temple. Her eyelashes are the curtain of that temple. Her forehead is the canopy of the temple. Her lotus mouth is the jai jai sound of the temple. Her ears are the walls of the temple. Her nose is the ringing bells in the temple. Poet Surdas says, worship the beautiful queen Sri Radha, who dedicated her everything in the service of Govardhan Dari. Thank you, Surdas. Now, not only in Krishna Leela, but also in Gaura Leela, the use of bells is very significant. In the Shastra Gaura Leela Chintamani, attributed to the scholar Keshava Kashmiri Pandit, who of course was delivered by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and continued his poetry, it's written, I really like this part. In Gaura Leela, in the house of Mahaprabhu, Vishnupriya shows him a lamp. Mother Sachi blows the conch, and Ishan, his house servant, rings the bell. In the courtyard of the house of Srivas Pandit, Nityananda Prabhu does the artik to show him, Mahaprabhu, the lamp. Advaitacharya blows the conch, and Srivas Pandit rings the bell. In the forest of Bengal, while coming back to his residence in the evening, Haridas shows the lamp to him. Narahari twirls the whisk. Vasudev blows the conch, and Gadadhar Prabhu rings the bell. In Gambhira, Swarup Damodar shows the lamp to him, Rai Ramananda blows the conch, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya rings the bell, while the small boy, Gopal Guru, dances while saying, Jai, Jai, Jai. In Vrindavan, the eyes of cows shows him the lamp. The Dira Samira's soft breeze blows the conch. The trees and flowers move like a flying whisk, and the flowing water of the Jamuna rings the bell. The flowing water of the Jamuna rings the bell. Hare Krishna. We could go on forever, right? So we will finish today with a beautiful pastime from the pen of the Vaishnava poet and author Lalita Kishore, whose life and works we discussed recently in another lecture. It's called, appropriately, The Lost Bell. Once upon a time, all the gopis of Braj came to the doorstep of Radharani's palace and said, "Oh, most merciful Princess of Varshana, please hear our request." So Sri Radha, who was sitting in her chambers, heard the gopis and invited them in for darshan. Now the group of gopis was headed by Lalita Saki. And as they entered, she came forward and said, "Oh Radhe, we are very distressed by the activities of this Krishna. Not only is he breaking our water pots, stealing our butter, hiding our clothes on the trees, and fooling all of us with his so-called love, this time he has done something very bad to us. He made a group of his illiterate cowherd boys open all the belts of bells around our cows' necks and freed them from our goshalas. Now all our cows are lost in the forest. We can't find them because we can't hear their bells." So Sri Radha smiled and said, "Dear gopis, I'm very sorry to hear this, but the reality is that You love the hero of all playful pastimes. You love the hero of all playful pastimes. It's not his fault, but ours, that we have become so attached to him. But I have a remedy for it. Let us steal his kinkini, his belt made of 100 bells, with which he attracts the senses of all the cows, like bells hanging on the cows' necks attract him to them. Lita said, Sri Radha, did you hear the saying from our Guru Jana? If not this, then that? Which would mean, in this case, if not the bells, then the flute will work for sure. So Sri Radha smiled and said, when that time comes, I will show him my face. And by looking at my face, he will be unable to blow air into his flute from his lips. Thus he will be unable to collect his cows, and he will surrender to me, and I will give him all kinds of punishments. So how does this unfold? Not this, not that. If not this, then that. So meanwhile, Krishna, desiring to bathe in the Jamuna, left all his cows near the bank of the river. He removed all his ornaments and dove into the water to swim with his friends. And at that point, Lalita appeared on the scene. She came to the bank and stole his kinkini bell belt and hid it in the forest. It's described with the help of Yogamaya. And after finishing his jalkeli, which means his water pastimes, Krishna came out of the water and he quickly dressed himself, actually with the help of all his cowherd friends. One boy dried his body with cotton towels. Another smoked his hair to dry. Some friends tied his dhoti. Others tied his turban. Some boys decorated his forehead with fresh sandalwood paste. Some put on his earrings. Some put flower garlands around his feet. And some fanned him with lotus leaves and sprinkled him with Jamuna jal, Jamuna water. And after showing him his reflection in the waters of the Jamuna, they all told him, Krishna, now it's time to call the cows by ringing your kinkini bell belt. But as soon as Krishna searched for the belt around his waist, he discovered it wasn't there. And panicking, he told all his cowherd friends, start searching for it everywhere. So the boys started looking in the immediate area, and then it's described in every forest grove in Vrindavan, but they simply couldn't find it. So then Madhu Mangal told Krishna to play his flute. Okay, if we don't have the kinkini bell belt, just play your flute and we can go home. Just play your flute, he said, before it gets dark, because it was getting late for them to go back to Nandagram. However, when Krishna put his flute to his lips and started putting his fingers on the holes of the flute, Sri Radha and her gopi friends suddenly appeared nearby, and he got distracted. It's described by the infinite, endless, and matchless beauty of Sri Radha. The infinite, endless, and matchless beauty of Sri Radha. And he was unable to play his flute. So putting aside his flute, Krishna said to Sri Radha, Dear Sri Radha, I offer my respects to your divine beauty. It always encourages me to perform my duties. But today, the nature of your beauty is distracting me from the art of playing my flute. In the state of mind, I am remembering all my past activities and find myself guilty of cheating your Sakis by arranging to steal the belts of the bells of their cows. So Sri Radha smiled and said, My dear Shyam Sundar, then give up your ways of playing with my innocent gopis. Krishna replied, O Radha, along with you, they all live within my heart. They were not giving me their butter, so I decided to take revenge and let all their cows go free. And you couldn't find them because my boys stole their neck bells. Now in your presence, I admit I was wrong. Sri Radha said, You have accepted your mistake, so now you may go. So Krishna said, "Oh Priya, I will, but please return my kinkini belt." So Sri Radha said, "For that, Krishna, you have to collect all the cows and bring them back to the respective goshalas of the Sakis." With that instruction, Krishna called all his cowherd friends and ordered them to follow Sri Radha's instruction. And at that point, Sri Radha tied the kinkini belt back around Krishna's waist. Then Lalita Saki performed arti to the divine couple, while all the Sakis together rang beautiful sounding bells in their hands. Lalit Kishore, at the end, he prays to Sri Radha, "O Queen of Vrindavan, please bless me with Krishna Prem, for you alone are able to bestow it." Hare Krishna. Prabhu, wasn't that nectar? A supreme nectar? Hare Krishna. So, yes, the first of this little mini-series, and bells. Who can imagine so much nectar from bells? But everything is to be glorified in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So we'll finish here, and see you next Friday. All glories to Prabhupada. Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Gaura Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan ki, Nitai Gaura Pimanandi, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe Sham.